Hi everyone, this is Kona, and I'm going to go through week 13. First of all, week 13 might seem like a lot and really crazy, but in all honesty, it's really not that bad. So bear with me. It might seem awful, but I promise it's not that bad. So study resources, we've got linear regression notes, the solving for simple linear regressions, and the correlation regression activity, which I guess I should have labeled that better right there, so I'll fix that. I do have videos for all three of the notes. Uh, Definitely for the solving for simple linear regressions and the correlation regression activity, that's going to help you with the two quizzes. In all honesty, the quizzes should not be too bad this week. It should honestly just be, in fact, one of them should be super quick, perfect for everybody, no problem. We will be using the probability distribution calculator this week, and here's what you need to read. So for assignments, so first of all, we've got our discussion 13 correlations. So what you're going to do is look through this website, Spurious Correlations, and you can see things like U.S. spending on science, space, and technology by suicides by hanging, strangulation, and suffocation. So it looks like the more that we spend on science, space, and technology, the more people hang and strangle and suffocate themselves. And so here's just one example that you could use and try to come up with why you think that they go together. And you can be like completely silly, like number of people who drowned by falling into a swimming pool correlates with the number of films Nicolas Cage appeared in. And that's really funny. You can see the correlation is 67%, which isn't really a correlation. So here you can see there's the correlation 0.999, which is really close to 1, which is really high. Correlation 0.66604, that's not too high. But why do you think? So you think people like watch the Nicolas Cage films and then they're like, oh my gosh, they're so awful, I'm going to commit suicide? Or not commit suicide, but they fall into a pool because they're too busy looking at their phones watching the Nicolas Cage film. Sorry. So per capita consumption of cheese, bed sheets. So you can see there's lots of different things. Honey production, juvenile arrests, age of Miss America, murders by steam, hot vapors, and hot objects. So there's lots of different things here that you can use that you can be kind of funny with. So step 1, find two correlations, one positive and one negative. Do the following for each type of correlation. Include the chart in your post. To do this, click on the graph, choose copy image, provide a one-sentence summary of the correlation, and attempt to explain it. Remember, these are called spurious, so they might not have a serious. So in all honesty, go for the absurd. The more elaborate and strange, the better. Identify potential problems with the graph or data themselves. And the follow-up, just comment on other people's posts, maybe come up with alternative explanations, point out any potential problems, or whether or not they were correct and whether or not that was positive or negative that they picked out. So there's the correlation. Hopefully it's a fun one. Most of our students like coming up with a silly, absurd story for these, so hopefully you will too. All right, next is here, the Chapter 5, Quiz 1. Shouldn't be too bad. This is where literally just watch the video, look at the handouts, and it should be super quick and easy to do this. This one might take a little bit more. So this one should be like, I think I've had students complete this quiz in a minute or less and get perfect on it their first try. So this one should be super fast and easy. This one will take a little bit longer, but ultimately it shouldn't be very hard. It's just plugging in numbers, and I go through it in the video. So please, in the other videos. So please just watch the videos. You should be good with that. The Project 3 final project. I do know that the final project is due, but at this point, you've basically done everything but the conclusion. This is normally a project that's pretty easy to write up and pretty easy to finalize. So that's why I didn't feel bad. It's kind of stacking it up with this other stuff because it's only worth 100 points, which is still important, so don't like go completely sloppy on it. But you should have all the information for all of this, pretty much except the conclusion, done. Just make sure, like, play critical thinker, think real world. This is where a lot of you get like points knocked off. Also, take a look at the rubric, see where you're getting your points from, right? Okay, so then moving along, Project 4, Part 1. This is really easy. So based off of the discussion from last week, the finding data online, all you're going to be doing is just basically going back to what you found, look at my feedback. If my feedback is like green light, you're great, then you can basically just post what you already found from this discussion for this project. Double check everything, but you should be good to go. If I gave you feedback, then just address the feedback I gave you, make the corrections, and then submit it. So for this one, it's almost like this is the second draft or your second attempt of this discussion. So hopefully this should be a quick and easy assignment for you to turn in because you've already basically done it last week. The second part, part 4, is just taking the data you found in part 1. So you should have already found the data in part 1, which was last week actually in this discussion. And for this one, all you need to do is just enter in the actual data into Minitab and upload the file. So this one hopefully shouldn't be too bad either because all you're doing is just taking the data you found here and just actually putting it into Minitab. And here I've got the examples. You should have the identifier, which is your state. You should have your response variable. This was my example of cancer, a predictor, or 3 predictors. Do notice that the percents, so this is a percent, but I didn't do it as 0.517. I actually did it as 51.7, so make sure that your percents are entered in as whole numbers. Make sure you have at least 20 identifiers. I think that's pretty much it, so it's pretty straightforward. So even though this looks crazy, this quiz is super easy. This discussion is super fun. This quiz is really straightforward. The final project you should mostly have done. Part 1 is just basically the same thing that you did for your discussion last week, and part 2 is just taking the data you already found in part 1, which came from the discussion on last week, and just putting the data into Minitab. So yes, it looks like a lot, but it's more a lot of little things than big things. And I promise you will appreciate that I'm doing this week 13, because think about it, after this we've just got 14, 15, 16, and like the final. Trust me, you'd rather have this all now than the closer we get to the end of the semester. So, or, Thanksgiving week. So you really, you don't want this stuff the week of Thanksgiving. This is due before Thanksgiving. So if you look at next week for the week of Thanksgiving, it's not nearly as bad. So I hope this helps.